Welcome back to another episode of Off-Season Grades here on the Field of 68 Media Network. My name is Rob Doster. I have our Big Ten expert. He is wearing the Big Ten Network t-shirt for you right there, so
I
you know how
yeah.
smart he is when it comes to Big Ten basketball. And we are talking about the Illinois Fighting Illini. And you look right over his left shoulder right there, and you see the Illinois basketball jersey. There is not a single human being on the planet that you want to hear Illini takes from more than the one and only Mike Latula. Mike, what's going on, man? How you doing?
I'm doing well. I hate myself for wearing what I'm wearing right now. I didn't honestly didn't even that didn't even equate with me. So I'm not trying to be a hero here, but it is good to see you again, man.
Yeah, it's been a while for people that are watching this. We are recording this the day after the July 4th holiday, and I think it's the first time we've recorded something together in maybe like 2 or 3 months. So it's nice to hear your voice. We have a
Likewise.
timer set to see how long it's going to take us to get through each one of these episodes. So we'll see how all that goes. Um, the way that we're going to break these down for off-season grades, we're going to get through some of the roster changes. I have an X factor. Latulip has an X factor. We're going to see if those overlap. We're going to talk about the expectations for these groups, and then we're going to get into a grade for the offseason based on the moves that were made and some of the players that were brought back to me. And I think you probably agree. Player retention is going to mean more than going out and winning the transfer portal for a lot of these picks. So let's start with some of the roster changes. Out is Kasparas Yakashonis, Will Riley. Both of those guys obviously were NBA draft picks. Trey White has transferred to Kansas. Morris Johnson is up there at Michigan. And DJA has left the program. Back, Kai Boswell, Tommy Ivasic, Ty Rogers, and I believe Ben Humrickhouse is back, right? He's got
Yep.
another year. Okay.
Yep.
And they've added Andre Stoyakovich from the portal, Big Z from the portal, Mihailo Petrovic, David Murkovic, and three other freshmen that are actual freshmen instead of freshmen that are spending their first years playing college basketball. So a lot of moving parts here for the Illini. What do you make of this new look roster, Mike? What do you make of some of the changes that have been made in the way that Brad Underwood and his staff has gone about building a program here with as many Balkans as they possibly can?
I mean, the Balkan component of it is I don't think it ever gets old, even though I feel like it's talked about so much. Look, I think when you look at Illinois, they've had the factory reset two times in the last 3 years.
Mm-hmm.
3 years ago, and then last year, they just had to completely overhaul their roster. And now you have what feels a little bit more similar to 23, 24, where you added just positions of need, which I think they did with Stojakovic, with Big Z to provide front court depth. I mean, we'll probably get into maybe how we see him fitting in and what that outlook looks like. But in 23, 24, they went to the Elite Eight. Because I
Mm-hmm.
think in large part because of that continuity. Now, do you have a top 2 to 3 player in college basketball like Terrence Shannon was? I don't think so. But the collection of these pieces, I think, is just really, really interesting because I think truly Ivisic and Boswell were their two most consistent players by the end of the year last year. And Ivisic specifically, if he went into the portal this year, outside of maybe Quaintance, probably the best big in the portal. I like him more than Visar. I like him more than Owen Freeman. I like he's a guy that's 13-8 on almost 35% 3-point shooting, almost a 2-to-1 assist to turnover ratio at 7 foot and could be a hub in your offense. I mean, it's that's the way I look at it. So like that, him and Boswell coming back are really, really key components where you get a dual kind of two-way guy like Boswell is, point of attack defender. But getting Tommy back's huge. And we'll get into the other pieces and the X factors, but the retention is obviously the most important piece for Illinois.
Yeah, I think Kai Boswell is you get the leadership factor there, right?
Yeah.
Like you get a guy who is now kind of established himself in the program as more than just someone that had a whole bunch of hype coming out of high school, right? Like what do you average? Like 12, 5, 3.5 assists. Um, Hopefully he'll make some more threes this year, but I think he is a guy that in theory can kind of be a leader for a program. And I agree with you everything about Tommy Ivasic. The big question I have is, so this is a team that last year specifically, and even the year before that, kind of built around this idea of we're going to spread the floor. We're going to create driving lanes. We're going to try to get up as many threes as we can. We're going to play at pace. Like you're going to play that style of basketball. Everyone loves saying booty ball, but it was all about creating the space, creating those driving lanes, creating room at the rim, and being able to get up as many threes as you can with guys that understand how to play more or less, right? And my question is, did you add enough shooting for that to be a thing? And are you going to be able to pull that off when you have maybe your two best shooting big men are incapable? Like, I don't think that you could play Tommy and Big Z together. Can you? I don't think you could put the two Ivasiches on the floor together. So this was a team that the numbers I had written down, Mike, 17th in pace, top 30 in 3-point rate, and they shot 31.3% from three last season. That it doesn't matter who you get, what the pieces are. I think if Illinois is going to reach the ceiling of Big Ten contender, Big Ten title contender, team that can make it to the Elite Eight again, like those numbers have to be more efficient. And what I mean by that is if you're going to take that many threes, you got to make more than 3 out of every 10.
I agree, and I think the other component of that too is the reason why they were able to stay afloat last year because of the offensive rebounding.
Mm-hmm.
So if the shooting doesn't improve and the offensive rebounding because Trey White's gone, because Merez Johnson's gone, if that takes a dip, now your antennas are really up. But the difference I think is when you look at I keep referencing the 23-24 season. And part of the reason why Stoyakovich is such a good pickup is because I think you can do a lot of what you did with Marcus Damask, which is invert the floor, booty ball, back down. He's so good playing with his size at 6'7". He gets to the free throw line. He's crafty, in that kind of mid-range area and really good finishing around the rim. And that was kind of a hallmark of that offense with Damask. Like their pace wasn't high in 23-24. They really, I mean, Shannon was electric in transition when they got out, but when they didn't, it was chew clock, get to mask, 21 action, switches up top, get the matchup we want and attack it. And I think you could see more of that this year than just this gun ho, we saw last year play with pace and just chuck. I truly believe that. And I think that makeup that they have I think lends itself a little bit more to that. So we can talk about, what Petrovic is going to do offensively and Ivisic at the top of the key is a hub, but that component with Stojakovic, I think is real, and I think gives them a little bit more stability offensively and a little bit more variety offensively than they had last year.
All right, so I'm going to put a pin in the Stojakovic conversation because there's something I want to come back to on that. Before we do, I just want to hit you on Mrkovic, on Petrovic. What have you heard about these guys? I know you're tied in with that program and kind of largely some of the faces that we haven't necessarily seen before. I guess we'll throw Brandon Lee in there. We can throw any of the other freshmen that you want to highlight. What do you make of this group coming in, and who are you excited to see play for Illinois?
Yeah, I mean, we mentioned a few of the guys I'm excited to see, obviously, but Petrovic is interesting. And maybe I'll put a pin in Petrovic because we're going to get to our X factors.
Oh, look at that. Look at that. Look at that tease, huh?
But
You're
but
media
specifically,
pro. That's why you got the Big Ten Network shirt on over there.
Yeah. But Mrkovic is interesting because you watch him in the Hoop Summit, in the USA versus World game, and it's very obvious when he comes into the game. Like he's just one of those guys. I mean, he has the size. He's 6'9", 240, 250. Really physical. I think they like the way he complements Tommy, to be honest, especially if you're going to have a guy that is maybe stepping out on the perimeter a little bit more like Tommy does. Tommy's not a guy where you're like, we're going to throw it onto the block, incessantly. That's just not his game. I think they want to do a little bit more of that this year. But Mrkovic is a guy that I think can really punish mismatches. He's physical. He's a good rebounder. He's long. He rebounds outside of his range. Like that compliment I really like with Mrkovic. And there's a reason why I think even though he's a freshman, he could start at the 4 for them. And this is without even talking about the Ty Rodgers injury, which has just it's huge because I think it really kind of flips around how they want to work things from a personnel standpoint, from a lineup standpoint. But Brandon Lee is a guy that can really fill it up. I think Keaton Wagler is another one too that a guy that's been really impressive in summer workouts. And we just see, I mean, it may not happen with this Illinois team, but we've seen throughout the Big Ten. It was Jace Richardson last year. It was Jalen Hood-Schifino 2 years ago, 3 years ago. Just you have your certain outlook for teams, and then there's a freshman that comes in that just completely changes that and pushes through that ceiling that you see. And do I see with those guys in particular? Maybe not, but I know they've been impressed with Wagler. I know Humrickhouse for sure. Like Humrickhouse is really polarizing with his fan base. Um, it's funny because Humrickhouse's year, I was a huge Humrickhouse defender because I'm not sure what people like. What do you want from the guy? He's a spacer. He's 34, 35% from three. He is what like the way people view Ben Humrickhouse is the way that people is like what Cade Tyson did last year. I mean, Cade Tyson was 2 points a game, 29% from three, coming from Belmont, 16 a
I
game.
think part of it was the hype that he had. It's like, oh, you got this guy that tore up. Like the secret weapon has been found. The replacement for I'm blanking
For
on
the
his name.
mask.
Yeah, for the mask has been found, and it's like it's not. He was
I
just never.
thought he was honestly he was a victim of the hype, like you said. And a
Mhm.
lot of that wasn't from, I mean, Brad Underwood would talk in Ubben and be like, their practice facility and be like, man, he's an elite shooter. That's what he'd say. But some of the other stuff that was coming from the outside, that was like, this is a guy that's an all Big Ten player. That if you listen to anything I talked about, I was not saying that. And I think part of going up to this next level, I mean, that's a dude that was at NIIA a few years ago and
Mhm.
then is like boom Evansville the next year, boom Illinois the next year. And like that Illinois fan base, it's not a very forgiving fan base. It's what makes them amazing because they're so passionate. And that takes beyond like, hey, how do you adjust to your role? Being in that pressure cooker environment takes time to adjust to if you're not ready for it. And I think honestly, I don't think he was ready for it last year. And so I think he's got a year under his belt. Expectations, I think, level out a little bit. And I think he's a guy that can be effective for them this year. Whether that comes in 15 minutes a game, but like 38 to 40% from three, I think that's possible for him, Rickhouse.
If you haven't heard by now, we have partnered with BetMGM for the season. We'll be using BetMGM lines to make all of our picks, and we'll have special offers for the listeners and the viewers. Download the BetMGM app and sign up using the bonus code FIELD. Deposit at least $10 and place your first wager on any game, and you'll receive up to $1,500 in bonus bets. Go download the BetMGM app and use the code FIELD today. All right, let's get into the X factor for this group. I think largely it is, for me, it is did they add enough shooting? Are there enough guys that can make shots to create the space to be able to get up, you know, threes on 48% of your field goal attempts if you're going to shoot better than 31% from three? But I think specifically to me, it's Andre Stoyakovich and what does he turn into this year, right? We've seen him be a guy that puts up big numbers at a relatively inefficient rate. And if he is, again, a player that's going, what he averaged last year at Cal, 18 points a
18.
game,
Yeah.
under 2 assists with a negative assist to turnover ratio while shooting 42% from the floor and 32% from three. Like if that's who he is again, I think that Illinois is just going to be okay. If he ends up being the guy that we all thought was a potential one and done, a McDonald's All-American, Page's kid, if we get those numbers up where maybe the raw numbers come down a little bit, I don't know if he's going to average 18 for Illinois. If it's something like 15 or 16 on a higher level of efficiency, fitting in what they want to do, I think that that's a better option, and I think that that's what turns Illinois from being a team that is kind of like good in the mix, tournament team, top 25-ish, to being like, okay, when we get to February, March, we're looking at them as one of the teams that's going to end up being a top 3 or 4 seed with a real chance to be able to be playing deep into this tournament.
I agree. And I think it's part of the reason why systems are so fascinating because you just look at what he was dealing with at Cal last year. And granted, yeah,
Mm-hmm.
18 points a game. You could look at that as that's a proven high major scorer. But who are your bigs? It was Matty Sissoko and it was Lee Dort, right? Guys that don't space the floor. They didn't have a ton of spacers on that team in general. And the shooting point is important not only for Stojakovic, but what's around Stojakovic to allow him to kind of flourish in space too. So I agree. I think I'm pumping the brakes on Stojakovic as like give you the keys and you are our offensive engine. I don't think he's an offensive engine, but what I think he is Look at the spot Will Riley was in last year, where Avicic gets the ball at the
Hmm.
top of the key, and you get a guy at the wing that cuts through immediately, and you get those passes over the top because the bottom, the paint's vacated. I think Stoyakovich can get 4 to 6 points out of that a game. I think he can get work and get to the free throw line with the way they back down with Damask. Truly, I think he has the size, and I think he's going to have mismatches at times. Um, where I think he is a bit underrated is defensively. And you would say that, and like you can maybe go, oh, I don't know, but you don't just stumble into 7 blocks against Notre Dame. And like his ability to recover, his timing. I think you have a point of attack defender like Boswell, and then you have a guy like Stoyakovich that maybe takes that second assignment, kind of like Yakashonis did last year.
Hmm.
And I just like his ability with his length and his size. I just think he's better on that end than people give him credit for. So I think that's another reason why you could look at him as an X factor.
All right, give me yours.
It's Petrovic because all the stuff like the spacing, all that stuff I talked about, he has an opportunity, I think. And look, Yakashonis was a top 20 draft pick, but Yakashonis was young, and his weakness at times was like he wasn't he didn't have the burst to like really tilt the defense. Like I don't care who's guarding me, I'm winning this matchup and getting two to commit to me. That just wasn't necessarily KJ's game. Petrovic has that burst. And so if the product is in line with what you envision him to be, like the reason I say he's an X factor isn't just because like it's why he's an X factor, right? Range of outcomes. I've seen him listed at 6'1". I've seen him listed at 6'3". Which one is he, right? What type of shooting do you get from him? But how does he fit in defensively? What I just mentioned about Stojakovic makes it really interesting because if Stojakovic is good defensively, that slides Petrovic down the personnel chart on who he has to guard because Boswell's going to take the guy that's point of attack. So where Petrovic excelled was kind of like Braden Smithish, where it's like, am I the best one-on-one defender? No, but I'm an Angel Rodriguez roamer and guy that can play passing lanes and kind of be a free safety. Because I know for a fact that they want to generate more turnovers this year. They do. They don't want to sit back and drop and have a low turnover rate. And I think Petrovic can contribute to that. So he's going to be a guy that's going to be in ball screens pretty frequently. And I think truly like the thing that pops on tape with him in that Adriatic League is he can get by guys. And that sounds simple, but it means the world for a team that maybe wants to generate more real, like uncontested 3-point looks to get that number that you're talking about up. And I think Petrovic can do that.
Yeah, and the other part of it is you never know what the adjustment level is going to be for a kid coming over from Europe playing and
Yes.
living in America for the first time. You know, we saw uh, UCLA 2 years ago when they brought in Daimara and Jan Vide and Berke Buchtenschel. Uh, that was a really highly touted crop of Europeans coming in, and they kind of struggled to adapt. But now they came in late. They got there in August. They weren't there to try to adjust. I don't think Mick Cronin is necessarily the easiest person to communicate with if you don't speak the language. It's hard enough to know what he's saying when he's speaking in English, let alone when your first language is something different than English. So I think that adjustment always is always something where you're kind of playing the wait and see game, right? And if he ends up being a guy that at the end of the day is best as a backup point guard, wouldn't be the most shocking thing in the world. Is he a guy that can average 12 and 6 on efficient shooting numbers for this Illinois team? That wouldn't shock me at all. So, your expectations, because I think that when it comes to the Big Ten this year, it's Purdue's league to lose, right? And honestly, I have Purdue as the preseason #1 team in America. I think it's Purdue's title to lose, the national title I'm talking about. And then once you get past them, I think Illinois is one of a half dozen teams that you could talk me into being the second best team in the league. And I think that finishing as a top 4 seed heading into the tournament and getting to the second weekend should be what the minimum standard of expectation is for this group. I don't think a Final Four is outside the range of outcomes. I think that they can get there if things break right for them. I also would not be really all that surprised if they're like an 8 seed and losing the second round to a 1 seed. I think that all of those things can happen, but top 16 team make it to the second weekend to me should be what the expectation is for Illinois every single year, not just this year.
I agree. And I think I'll talk about the 23-24 season again. That's where they want to get back to. They
Hmm.
want to get back to where they were 2 seasons ago. And that's why they opted for more of a veteran-laden team compared to last season. I mean, even for Yakashonas coming over, it's new. It's a culture shock, and it can be all those things. But for Petrovic, for Mirkovic, like these are dudes that have odds are they've left home already and they've played pro. And like that is something that is something a lot of high school guys haven't done. That's really new for them. So I think the experience that they brought in gives you a shot to get to that, latter half of the second weekend. And then, like you said, anything can happen, right? I mean, you get a good draw in the Sweet 16, Elite Eight, and move on. Uh, Punch your ticket to a Final Four. That wouldn't shock me at all. But a return to that second weekend, like you said, I think that would be considered a success for this Illinois group.
All right. Grade the offseason. What do you got,
A
Mike?
minus.
A minus. Interesting.
Yeah. Yeah, I do. I think look, you lost two NBA draft picks and you replenish that with Andre Stoyakovich and a guy who's just really, really seasoned overseas as a point guard. You get back Tomislav Ivisic, like I said, who I think would have been a top three big in the portal if you went into the portal. And then Kylan Boswell is a guy that was getting offers from higher offers from other schools and decided to stay. And you talked about that component, like that pillar component of culture, having that in your locker room. They filled a lot of really key holes. Now I think the depth and who, which one of these freshmen maybe pops as a rotation player, like that's all a question. But the retention piece mixed with getting a bigger fish like Stojakovic and just kind of the way they've worked around the margins to bring in potential impact guys overseas and keep that pipeline going, I think is why I come away giving them an A minus.
It's kind of the same thought process for me. I went with a B plus, but I largely because I don't love the idea that two of like the 4 or 5 best players on your roster kind of play the same position, and I don't know if it necessarily works. And I think that there are some gambles that you're taking when it comes to some of the overseas guys. But I mean, you lost 2 first-round picks, and you were able to replace him with a former McDonald's All-American, a 22-year-old point guard that was all whatever he was in the Adriatic League, and you bring back a pillar of your defense in Kai Boswell, and one of the, like you said, one of the best bigs in the Big Ten last year. And can we call him Big T? Is that we got Big Z and Tommy? Like I
It
don't,
kind of makes sense. Yeah.
especially if Tommy is like he might not be taller, but overall he's bigger than like you can't be Big Z and be the smaller brother on the same like, right? Like that just doesn't seem
The
right.
irony. It's the
Yeah,
irony.
I don't know, whatever it is. But you got back Tomislav Ivisic, and you got back
Well,
Kai Boswell, and
yeah.
you added a really nice piece in Andre Stojakovic. Like I think the roster's good. I think they're a top 20 team in America. I don't, and I honestly, you'll see with some of my other grade. Like I don't think a B plus is the worst grade that you can be giving anybody. So
No, no, it's
I'm
not.
in.
And quickly on Z, I know we talked about, Stojakovic, but Big Z's biggest challenge this year is going to be the scale down. Like he's gonna scale his game down a little bit in this Illinois system. And like things were kind of freewheeling at Arkansas when he came in. It was almost like chaotic when he was in the game. And I think they're trying to dial things down for him. And I think that's going to be the key is can you be like a really good rotational piece on a winning team, making winning plays, being in the right spot defensively to position yourself for what we saw last year, which in limited time, like he's a good rim protector. And it's more so like weak side stuff than it is head up, get back down and contest the play. So that's just what I want to mention about Big Z because that's going to be a challenge. I mean, we'll get to it in probably some of the other offseason grades, but scaling down it's a really hard thing for some players, and so he's going to have a challenge this year.
Yep. And I will say, I don't think there's anywhere to go but up when it comes to Big Z's drop coverage defending. So, the coaching staff, well, no matter what happens, I think it is pretty impossible for him to not have positive dividends and positive returns on that end of the floor because he can't go down any farther,
And
man.
and Illinois mixed it up this year. Like they made some staff changes. They added, what they look at as like a defensive coordinator.
Hmm.
And so I think it's all going to help Z in this situation. So he's 7'2". He's kind of a freak athlete for his size. I mean, there's tools there, just whether or not you can get it to work.
Well, then maybe he didn't get the greatest coaching at the stop. Who said that? Did someone say that? That wasn't me. That wasn't me that said that. Listen, Mike, it's always a pleasure to see you, man. If you guys are following along with the Field of 68, we're going to be rolling out these off-season grades more or less daily for the next 6 weeks. We're hoping to have as many as 45 to 50 of these coming for you, the college basketball fans. So until the next episode, follow along. Field of 68, Mike Latula. My name's Rob Doster. We'll see you next time.